Hey everybody, BTO Pro here. Everybody, I mean, uh, really like four people. So this is the bonus round. Welcome. We're out of the weeds of just what is a web component into how do we build full applications. So I'm a stickler for state management, and it's why here. So I've taken your code in question. Again, if you're watching this, but you're not these four people who are developing this code, it won't make as much sense when I say that, but hopefully you'll still gain some insight. So what I've done is we've got an open WC boilerplate here, working on some stuff with our HAX, our new HAX app, HAXcms app layer. So I've just got a tag on the page, HAXcms app, and I've got this my element. Now, first, let's look at what my element is. It's pulling in from test. Nothing super interesting here other than I'm experimenting with this thing called animate from Lit Labs motion library. So what you do is you don't actually define animations. You just say, this is the thing I want to animate. And then whenever there are property attribute type of relationship changes, or if there was a class that was written here based on a variable changing, this is in the prototype code, like shifted, it would magically animate between states in a way that's nice looking. So let's see what that does. The blue box is here. If I hit move, again, that code doesn't have any animation in it, and it's applied shifted. So it's stateful. If I take shifted off, it just jumps back to where it was. If I hit move and then another, right, we get another and shifted, right? And we can kind of do these in different orders to see what the effect would be, right? So if I do another, it goes like that. Do another, then move, and then another. We're down in this corner, right? So I haven't written anything other than saying, hey, animate based on these parameters, and it's figuring out the difference between them. Super clever. Don't know if it's fully ready for prime time. I'll have to keep playing. I'm just going to keep using it and see what happens. But so it's extremely easy to get stuff to animate in that fashion. So I just put animate on there and then toggled. So that's purely for demonstrative purposes. Now, implementing it in something practical, as well as starting to build the app housing for our element. So you all are working on details, bars, stuff like that. I made a store, and commonly a store is just like the source of truth for the application, if you will. So there is no requirement you make that an element in the DOM. I personally like doing it just so that I can request it multiple ways. So what I've done, imagine I have a store. It's built on something called MobX. I'll show you what that is in a minute. And then I take this class of store, I export just that. So if you just want the class, you can leverage it. And then I have all this other boilerplate type of stuff that I use, exporting the HAXcms store, requesting availability. So this is a magic function call that will call itself and append the tag to the DOM. The tag version of it has an auto run in it, auto run. And when it's put on the page, its constructor basically just tees up an access to the store. So all this little thing is doing is saying, whenever the location changes, change the step to match that we're on. Now, how does it do that? MobX is unbelievably powerful and kind of confusing. Uses proxy objects, which I'm not ultra well versed in, other than that there's one object and you pass around the references to it, and it is only one. However, what's amazing about MobX is the ability to do observables and computed. Now, I'm importing MobX. There's a lot of assumptions. We're making a lot of logical leaps here, gang. But MobX is amazing. We've used it on other projects. So let's just start there. Now, I don't know why the spacing of this is bad. There we go. Okay. So we also don't have a site title. I see. Okay. So we just have active. So effectively what MobX does, and I'm going to do active item, active item equals null, because technically we need that. So you set defaults for these values. Then you're basically saying, whenever any of these values mutate in any way, I need you to fire off an update notification. So think of this as kind of like event management, but on steroids. So you can subscribe to individual property changes on the store or mutations on the store. And the way that you do this is via auto run. And so imagine we've got this shared contract of what matters with our app layer. In this case, I'm saying the location, which we're going to peg to the URL changing. JWT, which is for future uses. Let's actually take that out. We don't need JWT yet. Step. So what step are we on in our little app, right? If we're panning through to different steps. And then routes, which I'll show you what routes are in a moment. And then active item. And active item is computed. So the magic of MobX with observables and auto run, we'll show how it works in a second here, is by saying this is computed, it's expecting there to be get and then the item in question. Anything in here that's referenced that is a property that it cares about, for example, this .routes, if anything changes in this .routes because it's observable, this will automatically run and recompute what that value is. So for example, when routes changes or this .step, as in the store, the step we're on changes, it will automatically recalculate what the active item is. So base layer, low level stuff, right? So then let's look at a router. So a router, I pull in something called Vaadin Router, used it before. It's a clean way of basically saying there's an event that occurred in the DOM. It's related to the address changing. What is the data associated with that address change? So it's how you can make a single page app or one page app or progressive web app, whatever you want to refer to it as. These are all similar things. But basically, when you click to different pages, the address changes, but you never get a browser reload because it captures this in the router and then says, oh, we're on this now. And it broadcasts some information so that you can then react to that change and make it part of the entire state management of the application. So it's interfacing between the browser and your element then. So in the app router element, which is a vanilla web component, I'm not doing anything with base URI just yet. That's for future usage. But we have in here an auto run with the router and a function called to.js or method. So we have to.js, and we're doing that on store.routes. Now, we also have an event listener. Now, whenever Vaadin notices that the route of the page has changed, that the path has changed, it is going to compare it against what we pass in. And if it matches, it'll fire off this event. Then we take that event and we just change a value in the store. And by changing the location in the store, all the rest of MobX's magic will kick in, and anything that cares about the location changing will automatically run. So let's trace this a little bit. Auto run is a magic function in MobX. And so see it coming in here from MobX. to.js takes proxy objects and converts them to real values. So what do I mean? Technically in JavaScript, when you have an object and you reference that object, it can get a little murky as to if you have a copy of the object and its keys, or you have a literal reference to the object, like a pointer. So what to.js does is it basically, we are assuming that store.routes is a proxy object. It is like everything's going to point to this. And by calling to.js, it takes a literal copy of the entire object. So I can guarantee when this runs, I have a new copy of the object in question as opposed to a reference to an object. But the magic of MobX, by enclosing things in this auto run, store.routes. So similar to in lit element, right, where we have our properties, and then our properties declaration, if we have a value that's in the properties, then if that value shows up in the render function, anytime that value changes, magically updates, right? This is that, but on the object itself, then running little snippets of code in other things, no matter where it is. It's very confusing. So by including store.routes here, and by me making observable routes, right? This is off of the store. So I've imported the store from this file, which is just a like magic little silly class object. Me writing this here, whenever store.routes changes, it will automatically rerun this code, no matter what has changed the routes anywhere in the application. So what does update router do? Update router sets the routes for our app. In this case, it's very simplistic. And it basically takes in whatever those items are, that are new, and then it also makes some fake ones. These are just like fallbacks so that if you don't have a valid route, you don't just like hard brick your application. So, like you click a link that's bad, basically. So this is going to bridge us the location so that when Vaadin notices that there's been a location change, it's going to run an event. That event is going to update the location. And then if the location's routes change, we're automatically going to update the routes that are internal to our little thing here. So let's see an app, right? So we've got a router and we've got a store. These are two very common conceptual pieces of any application that you're going to build on front end. Now, let's look at how that's used in an app. So I've also pulled in some other crazy characters here. I've got that animate function. I've also got a scrollable component, which I'm experimenting with, but I might actually stick to. What the scrollable component does is it allows you to, it provides different nice defaults so that we can like style these things in a way that's logical, but it also provides the ability to do snap scrolling very easily in a clean way. And snap scrolling does that so that now I'm on 2. It's not like a little portion of a thing. So you can see I'm actually dragging, but it's not letting me drag. That's called snap scrolling. I don't want to say it's a newer approach. It's a new approach to me personally that's a concept as far as CSS. And it's actually really widely supported. So what it's doing is it's forcing this, even though it has a scroll bar, to snap to certain positions. If you were on a mobile device and you swiped, it would like let you do like a gravity swipe, and then it would just snap to 4, 3, 5, 6 kind of a thing. So that you don't get like part of the way through an element visually. Really good for image galleries and the like. So let's go back to this and see what it's complaining about. I did just delete something. Okay, cannot set active item, which only has a getter. All right, so MobX also is helping us write better code. That was in the store. I had set a null value. We can't do that. So this is what our little app is, right? I had my move around thing. That's disconnected. So the page loads, and watch what happens to the address. Let's inspect so we can see what happens, because it happens very quickly. All right. So it changes the address to step -1. And we see that cool is selected, the very first item here. Now, if we actually look at the code associated with that in our app, all our app has is has a step. It says that the default step in question is the first step. Path doesn't exist locally. But if I say that the default step is 3 for our application, notice it just highlighted 3, changed the address, and scrolled over to 3. So now let's make this 2, right? And now it starts at 2. All right, so what we can do with that is I can say 1. Note the automatic updating here, the address, and this scrolling to screen 1, step 1, whatever you want. Now, these links are also kicked out. So if I actually go to step 4, the address, right, this is a link. Nothing special there. A href, step 4. The act of going to step 3 or 4, the router, which is Vaadin, picks up that change of address request, stops it because it matches something in its router, and instead emits an event saying, hey, we actually intercepted that. Do you want to do anything with it? So putting in what the routes are is critical, because if there's a route that doesn't match, like if you had a link down in here somewhere and I clicked it, if it was a route that isn't part of this page, it would let it go there. It's a very, to me at least, a unique aspect of the Vaadin router. Some routers, you have to create special links called like valid router link. This, you define the pattern by which you will have the app take control of the routes. And then through this little relationship of tying the router to the store via MobX, when the router changes or notices the change, it changes the store changes its internals, the app reflects that. So let's look at what's going on in the code here of this app. So I have a step. I started at step 2. Let's do step 1, which that'll then break because I don't have a little fallback mechanism for those. So I have step 1. I'm then saying this.routes. So when the path is Step one. Unfortunately, Vaadin requires you to have a component defined. We're not using components in the way that Vaadin would want. So I just have this thing called component. This is fake. What step it is, ID in question, and label. So I'm going to change these labels around. Let's say that this would be like the welcome page, right? And this would be like step 2, and this would be like select styles, and this would be like get writing. And this is purely demonstrated, right? We're gonna do something similar. It's not, we're gonna let the user like just click the random crap. So I've got that data there. Now, this dot routes sets a value and step sets a value. Then on first updated, we've got these auto run blocks. And the auto run block says, if we have a location which has a route, which has an ID, which is this information here, right? It's basically pegged to what this info is. If we have that, query select the shadow root for an ID, make sure that we have a reference to the ID as an object, as like the value, not like the proxy object, and then scroll that item into view using a smooth scrolling behavior. Now it's a snap scroller too, so it'll just like click kind of a thing. So now we have another auto run. And this auto run block says, take the active item, look at its ID, and if the step internal to our app doesn't match the active item step, set the step to the active item step. Then click on the link in the shadow DOM to match. I'll show what that does in a second. Now, updated. So when step and routes change in our app in any way, it automatically is going to update the same value in the store. When that value updates in the store, it's going to recalculate the active item. Where's the store? The active item. So we're going to change the step when it initially loads. We're going to change the routes. Magically, the two of those will automatically rerun active item. Active item changing will then automatically run code references active item. So the active changing the step at any point in the application will mutate the store. The store will then rerun its own code to generate the active item. The change of the active item is automatically told to rerun this function. All right, are you having a headache yet? So in our app, we care about the step and the routes. The step is just what the active item we're on is, and the routes is all of that other metadata about what we do to care about the URL pegged to the rest of it. And then take a scrollable component, just throw some of its properties in. Let's not worry about that. And then we've got active step, which active step is told to be background color orange and text color white, which is what you see reflected there. So what's going on this page? It throws a router tag down. And by throwing a router tag down, now we are controlling the routing, right? So where is that? Where's the router tag? It's at the top here, right? So we have HAXcms app router, right? And it just says fake in it because it wants to write a component into itself. We might do things that way. I just honestly, I don't think through it in that regard, but we might actually have to do it that way. We'll see. So anyway, I generate a list. I've referenced the store, and by referencing the code of the store, hey, look, there's that tag on the page. So I could store as a global value, and this is actually why I do it this way. It's just a shortcut, and I can get access to the store dot step, and I can see that the current step is 1. Or I can mutate it directly on the MobX store, and we can see it visually react through the app, right? That then forces a change internal to our app to shift this to step 3, as you saw. Even though I'm mutating the store, I'm not mutating the app. Now, if I mutate the app, it mutates the store. And by mutating the store, you also should see it reflected in the address change, right? So if I move this to 3, we move to step 3. If I move this to 4 via the store, the app responds to the step changing there. This is why I harp on state management in these little teeny tiny properties so heavily. I can now work with this in any way I want. I can click and change the link, and the link will mutate the app or the store, which mutates the app, which then scrolls to the right position. The app is in charge of where this scrolls. Or I can tell the app, hey, actually, we're on step 4, and the app will mutate the store to reflect an identical change, which then clicks the link to ensure we're in sync. So that if we refresh the page, and it doesn't because I don't have the local setup in a way that it would let me do that with these routes. But if I were to refresh the page, like in HAXcms, you see this on any page. This is effectively what's happening whenever you go to any content in a HAXcms site. So HAXcms is preparing to load. It's a MobX based app, just like the rest of the setup is. There we go, right? So I click this, it changes the route in question. You see that change there. If I hit the back button, it takes me back to this page, right? So that is that same exact relationship. If I collapse this stuff away and I click a link to the next page, or I go back, or I hit back several times, you think that you're actually bouncing around to different web pages, and you can even see that that's scrolling to the thing in question. That is what I mean by perfect state management and managing all the way down in these little attributes. That when the address changes, and this has the correct backend for it, so when the address changes, I refresh, the path is /edtechjoker/requirements. So then the load of the page, it's taking that address and using that to seed what the default state is for the application. In this case, hey, go load this content. And so all those little decisions of making sure we know what the thing is, I can pass that down and say, oh, hey, you, this is what's active. Oh, that's what's active. Highlight it. Oh, click this link. Oh, well, now the address needs to change to reflect that. The next button should be relative to the previous page in question. And so all that information can be managed by just these little tiny properties, pinpricking and changing in MobX. So for our purposes with this, right, and you can see the nice little animated transition thing is pretty cool too, actually. This is not done, certainly, but this is enough of a starting point, I think, to really take us to where we need to go as far as our little app. We're making a full one-page app that is completely reimagining what the initial entryway to usage of HAX is. And so this is a video, me explaining this conceptually, what I'm about to push up to their repo that they're working on, so that they can take this and make it look awesome. I know you guys can make it look awesome. So if you are just a fly on the wall to what we're doing, you can check out haxtheweb.org or hax.camp. And hopefully by the time you actually bother to watch this video, who knows, like 2 months from now or so, those sites will be updated with new information because of what we're working on and talking about today. So I hope this has been useful. I highly recommend MobX if you've learned nothing else. And I will provide a link to the repo where we're working on this because it's getting pretty neat.